when primitive humans unleash reality-bending weapons on an arrogant alien armada. Captain Gideon Marsk watched the Oltaran fleet approach through the tactical display, their crystalline ships gleaming like predatory insects against the void. 47 vessels strong, each one bristling with energy weapons that could vaporize a small moon. His own fleet, 12 human ships that looked like rust buckets held together with prayer and spite. "Sir, they're hailing us," Communications Officer Chen reported, her voice steady despite the odds. "Put them through." Marsk leaned back in his command chair, a sardonic smile playing at his lips. "Let's hear what these glittering bastards want." The main screen flickered, revealing an Oltaran commander whose iridescent carapace caught the bridge lighting like oil on water. 4 arms gestured dismissively, while compound eyes regarded the humans with barely concealed contempt. "Primitive vessels," the alien's voice resonated through the translator, each word dripping with disdain. "Your energy signatures are pathetic. Surrender now, and we may allow your species to serve as laborers in our expansion fleets." Marsk's grin widened. "Generous offer, counter-proposal, go fuck yourself with a plasma torch." The Oltaran's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Your bravado is admirable but futile. We detect minimal power output from your ships, ancient fusion drives, crude weapon systems. You are relics attempting to play among the stars." "Ancient, huh?" Marsk glanced at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Tors, who was barely suppressing laughter. "Well, Commander." "Supreme Warsinger Zethkaller of the Infinite Swarm." "Right, Zeth. Mind if I call you Zeth? Here's the thing about assumptions, they make an ass out of you and, well, mostly just you in this case." The transmission cut as the Oltaran fleet began their approach, moving in the classic pincer formation that had crushed a dozen species before humanity. Marsk watched them close the distance, their ship's energy signatures blazing like miniature suns on his sensors. "All ships, this is Marsk," he broadcast on the fleet channel. "Remember, we're just poor little humans with our sad, outdated technology. Let's keep up appearances until they're nice and close." The Defiance Bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. They'd been through this dance before, the underestimation, the condescension, the inevitable surprise when humanity's true capabilities revealed themselves. It never got old. "Oltaran fleet is moving to surround us," Tors reported. "They're taking their sweet time about it." "Why rush when you're hunting wounded prey?" Marsk's fingers drummed against his armrest. "Chen, open a channel to all ships, tactical frequency." "Channel open, sir." "Ladies and gentlemen," Marsk began, his voice carrying the casual tone of a man ordering coffee, "our crystalline friends think we're running on fumes and good intentions. Let's maintain that illusion until they're committed to their attack run. Remember, cold fusion reactors stay masked, gravity wells remain offline, and for the love of all that's unholy, nobody fires until I give the word." The Oltaran fleet spread out like a net, their formation textbook perfect. 47 ships against 12, and they were taking their time to savor the moment. Classic predator behavior: play with your food before you eat it. "Sir," Tors called out, "they're charging weapons. Multiple energy spikes across their formation." "Let them cook," Marsk replied. "How's our masking holding up?" "Reactor signatures are holding at 15% of actual output," Engineering Chief Kowalski reported from his station. "They think we're running on backup power." The first Oltaran salvo lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Coherent energy beams lanced out from their formation, designed to cripple rather than destroy. They wanted prisoners, not debris. The human ships scattered, their movements seemingly desperate and uncoordinated. The Resilient took a glancing hit, her shields flaring and failing in a convincing display of technological inferiority. Captain Morrison's voice crackled over the comm. "Shields down to 40%. These bastards pack a punch." It was all theater, of course. The Resilient's true shields could have shrugged off that hit without breaking stride, but the Oltarans didn't need to know that. "Sir, they're moving to close formation," Tors announced. "Looks like they want to board us." "Of course they do." Marsk stood, straightening his uniform jacket. "Can't interrogate dead humans. Chen, patch me through to their commander again." Zethkalar's image reappeared, his compound eyes glittering with satisfaction. "Your resistance is admirable but futile. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." "You know what, Zeth? You're absolutely right." Marsk's expression was one of defeated resignation. "We're outgunned, outmanned, and frankly, I'm getting too old for this shit. But before we surrender, I've got to ask, how exactly did your species become the dominant force in this sector?" The Oltaran's mandibles clicked with pride. "Superior technology, overwhelming firepower, the ability to recognize and exploit weakness in our enemies." "Weakness?" Marsk repeated thoughtfully. "Yeah, that's always been humanity's problem. We're just so predictable." The Oltaran fleet had closed to optimal boarding range, their ships forming a perfect sphere around the human vessels. It was a formation designed to prevent escape, to ensure total capture of the enemy force. It was also exactly where Marsk wanted them. "You know what else is predictable, Zeth?" Marsk's smile turned predatory. "The fact that arrogant pricks like you always fall for the same trick." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships, drop the masking. Full power to all systems. Let's show these crystal-headed fucks what human engineering really looks like." The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. The 12 human ships that had been limping through space like wounded animals suddenly blazed with power signatures that made the Oltaran fleet look like candles next to searchlights. Cold fusion reactors that had been running at a fraction of their capacity roared to full output, flooding space with energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. "Sir, Oltaran fleet is in full panic," Tors reported, his voice barely containing his excitement. "They're trying to scatter, but they're too close together." "Gravity wells online," Weapons Officer Park announced. "All ships reporting ready for synchronized deployment." Marsk settled back into his command chair, savoring the moment. Fire. Space twisted. The gravity-based weapons that humanity had developed in secret unleashed their fury on the trapped Oltaran fleet. Invisible hands of warped spacetime reached out and grabbed the crystalline ships, crushing them like insects in a closing fist. The Oltaran's energy shields, designed to deflect particle beams and plasma bolts, were utterly useless against weapons that attacked the very fabric of reality itself. The Infinite Glory, Zethkalar's flagship, tried desperately to escape the gravity well that had locked onto it. Its engine screamed at maximum output, but it might as well have been trying to outrun a black hole. The ship's crystalline hull began to crack under the immense gravitational stress, spiderweb fractures spreading across its surface like a disease. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Oltaran flagship," Chen reported. "Put it through, I want to hear this." Zethkalar's image was distorted now, his bridge sparking and failing around him. "Impossible. Your technology readings, they were minimal. How do you possess such weapons?" "Oh, those readings," Marsk chuckled. "Yeah, we call that running silent. It's this crazy human concept where you don't advertise your actual capabilities to potential enemies. Revolutionary stuff, really." The Oltaran commander's compound eyes widened in what might have been understanding or terror. You deliberately appeared weak." "Bingo, give the bug a prize." Marsk's tone was conversational, as if discussing the weather rather than the systematic destruction of an enemy fleet. "See, the thing about humans is that we're really, really good at killing things, but we're even better at making our enemies think we can't kill things. It's called strategy, Zeth. You should look it up." Another Oltaran ship imploded as its gravity well reached critical compression. The stellar predator simply ceased to exist, its matter compressed into a sphere no larger than a marble before the gravity field released, and allowed the debris to expand in a brief, brilliant flash. "Please," Zethkalar's voice was breaking up as his ship systems failed. "We surrender. We yield to your superior." "Surrender?" Marsk interrupted. "Oh, that's rich. You know what you told me about surrender just a few minutes ago, something about swift deaths, wasn't it?" The Infinite Glory's hull finally gave way, splitting open like a ripe fruit. Atmosphere vented into space in crystalline clouds as the ship's internal structure collapsed under the gravitational assault. "Sir," Torres called out, 17 Oltaran ships destroyed. The remaining 30 are attempting to flee." "Let them run," Marsk ordered. "But make sure a few of them make it home. Can't have a proper reputation if there are no survivors to spread the word." He watched as the surviving Oltaran vessels limped away, their formations shattered and their pride broken. It would be months before they could mount another offensive, and by then, word would have spread throughout their empire about the humans and their primitive technology. "Damage report," Marsk called out. "Minimal across the fleet," Torres replied. "The Resilient has some cosmetic damage from that first hit, but nothing that can't be fixed with some hull plating and a fresh coat of paint." "Casualties?" "None, sir, unless you count Lieutenant Morrison's bruised ego from having to pretend his shields were failing." Marsk nodded, satisfied. Another day, another species that had learned the hard way not to underestimate humanity. He'd lost count of how many times they'd played this game, the weak, primitive humans with their outdated technology, stumbling around the galaxy like lost children. It was almost too easy. "Sir," Chen spoke up, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Command." "Put it through." Admiral Sarah Chen's image appeared on the main screen, her expression stern but with a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Captain Marsk, I trust your diplomatic mission went well." "Oh, swimmingly," Marsk replied. "The Oltarans were very receptive to our message about peaceful coexistence. I think we really connected with them on a fundamental level." "I see. And would this connection have anything to do with the energy signatures our long-range sensors detected in your area?" "Just some fireworks, Admiral. You know how these alien species love their light shows." Admiral Chen's smile was predatory. "Indeed. Well, I hope you made our position clear to them." "Crystal clear, ma'am. I don't think we'll be having any more trouble with the Oltaran Starkin for quite some time." "Excellent. Return to base, Captain. We have new intelligence about a species called the Vorthan Collective. Apparently, they think humans are nothing more than soft-bodied primitives with crude chemical propulsion." Marsk's grin widened. "Soft-bodied primitives? Well, we can't let that kind of slander stand, can we?" "My thoughts exactly. Safe travels, Captain." The transmission ended and Marsk turned to his crew. "You heard the Admiral. Set course for home. And somebody get me a cup of coffee, the real stuff, not that synthetic swill from the replicators." As the human fleet formed up and began their journey back to friendly space, Marsk reflected on the day's events. 47 Oltaran ships reduced to scrap metal and cosmic dust, all because they'd made the same mistake that dozens of species before them had made. They'd assumed that humanity's apparent weakness was real. It was a mistake that species throughout the galaxy continued to make, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Perhaps it was arrogance, or perhaps it was simply the inability to conceive that a species might deliberately appear weaker than it actually was. Either way, it worked in humanity's favor. The coffee arrived, black and bitter, just the way Marsk liked it. He sipped it slowly, savoring both the taste and the memory of Zethkalar's expression when the human ships had revealed their true power. That moment of realization, when an enemy understood that they'd been outplayed from the very beginning, never got old. "Sir," Torres called out, "we're receiving a message from the Indomitable. Captain Rodriguez wants to know if we're taking bets on how long it takes the Vorthan Collective to attack us." "Tell Rodriguez that I'll take the under on 2 weeks," Marsk replied. These militant species are all the same. They hear about a primitive species, and they can't resist the urge to prove their superiority. And when they do, Marsk's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. When they do, we'll be ready to give them the same warm welcome we gave the Oltarans. After all, it would be rude not to demonstrate proper human hospitality. The stars wheeled overhead as the human fleet continued its journey home, leaving behind the debris field that had once been the pride of the Oltaran Starkin. In the depths of space, the wreckage would serve as a monument to the dangers of underestimating humanity, a lesson that the galaxy seemed determined to learn the hard way, one species at a time. And Captain Gideon Marsk wouldn't have it any other way. The journey back to human space was uneventful, which was exactly how Marsk preferred it. Too much excitement in one day could give a man indigestion, and he was getting too old to enjoy the adrenaline rush of combat the way he used to. "Sir," Chen called out from her station, "we're receiving a coded transmission from Fleet Intelligence." "Put it through to my ready room," Marsk replied, standing and stretching. "Tors, you have the bridge. Try not to start any wars while I'm gone." "No promises, sir," Tors replied with a grin. Marsk's ready room was spartanly furnished: a desk, a chair, a small viewport, and a collection of bottles containing various alcoholic beverages from across human space. He poured himself a glass of genuine Earth whiskey and activated the secure communication terminal. The image that appeared was that of Commander Sarah Voss, Fleet Intelligence's liaison to the Outer Rim fleets. Her expression was serious, which usually meant bad news. "Captain Marsk," she began without preamble, "we've been monitoring communications traffic from the Oltaran Empire. It seems your little demonstration has had some unexpected consequences." "Good unexpected or bad unexpected?" Marsk asked, taking a sip of his whiskey. "That depends on your perspective. The Oltarans have issued a galaxy-wide warning about humanity's deceptive military capabilities. They're calling us a species of unprecedented cunning and technological sophistication." Marsk nearly choked on his drink. "They're what now?" "Apparently, your gravity weapons made quite an impression. The surviving Oltaran ships transmitted detailed sensor readings back to their homeworld, and their military analysts are having a collective nervous breakdown trying to figure out how we developed such advanced technology without anyone noticing." "Well, shit," Marsk muttered. "There goes our element of surprise." "Not necessarily," Voss continued. "The warning has had an interesting side effect. Several species that were considering military action against human colonies have suddenly decided that diplomatic solutions might be preferable." "Fear is a wonderful motivator," Marsk agreed. "But what about the species that are too stupid or too proud to back down?" "That's where things get interesting. We've identified at least 3 major powers that are viewing the Oltaran defeat as a challenge rather than a warning. The Vorthan collective you're already aware of, but there's also the hegemony of Kresh and something called the Eternal Dominion." Marsk set down his glass and leaned back in his chair. 3 major powers, all looking to prove that they're tougher than the Oltarans. This could get messy. It gets worse. Intelligence suggests they're forming some kind of alliance, a joint task force designed specifically to counter human deception tactics and unconventional weapons. How joint are we talking? Combined fleet strength of over 200 ships, with representatives from all 3 species. They're calling it the Coalition of Supremacy, which tells you everything you need to know about their collective ego. Marsk whistled low. 200 ships, that's ambitious of them. The good news is that they're still operating under the assumption that our gravity weapons are our only ace in the hole. They have no idea about the quantum disruptors, the temporal mines, or the reality anchors. The reality anchors are still experimental, Marsk pointed out. We've only tested them in controlled conditions. which is why Admiral Chen wants your fleet to serve as the test bed for full combat deployment. Consider it a field trial with live ammunition. Marsk grinned. Now you're speaking my language. When and where? The Coalition is massing at the Kepler Junction, about 3 weeks from your current position. Intelligence suggests they're planning to strike at the Tau Ceti colony as a demonstration of their superiority over human forces. Tau Ceti has a civilian population of over 50,000, Marsk said, his expression hardening. They're planning to massacre civilians to make a point. That appears to be their intention, yes. The colony's defenses are minimal, a few orbital platforms and a single patrol frigate, against 200 ships. It would be a slaughter, Marsk finished. Well, we can't have that, can we? What's Fleet Command's position? Officially, the Tau Ceti colony is outside our immediate sphere of influence, and any military action would be considered an act of aggression that could destabilize the entire sector. And unofficially, Voss's smile was sharp as a knife. Unofficially, Admiral Chen believes that the Coalition of Supremacy represents a clear and present danger to human interests throughout the galaxy. She's authorized you to take whatever action you deem necessary to neutralize that threat. With 12 ships against 200, those are interesting odds. The Admiral has faith in your ability to level the playing field. Marsk stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 alien species were preparing to demonstrate their superiority by murdering human civilians. It was the kind of arrogance that demanded a response, preferably one involving high explosives and creative applications of physics. Tell the Admiral that we'll handle it, he said finally, but I'm going to need some additional equipment. Specifically, I want a full complement of reality anchors for each ship in the fleet. That's a significant request, Captain. The reality anchors are still classified at the highest levels. Then declassify them. If we're going up against 200 ships, I want every advantage we can get. Voss nodded. I'll make the request. Anything else? Yeah, tell the Admiral that if this works, she owes me a bottle of that Centauri brandy she's been hoarding. And if it doesn't work? Marsk's grin was cold and predatory. Then it won't matter, will it? The transmission ended, leaving Marsk alone with his thoughts and his whiskey. 200 ships against 12. It was the kind of odds that would make a sane man reconsider his career choices. Fortunately, Marsk had never claimed to be entirely sane. He finished his drink and returned to the bridge, where Tors was monitoring long-range sensors with the focused attention of a man who'd learned that space was full of unpleasant surprises. Any contacts? Marsk asked. Nothing on sensors, sir, but communications has been picking up some interesting chatter on the alien frequencies. What kind of chatter? Military coordination signals, mostly encrypted, but our translation algorithms have been making progress. It sounds like someone's organizing a very large fleet movement. How large? Based on the communication patterns, I'd estimate somewhere between 150 and 250 individual ships. Marsk nodded. That matches what intelligence told me. Looks like we're going to have company soon. Sir, Chen called out, we're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Command. It's marked for immediate delivery. Put it through. The message was brief and to the point. Reality anchors approved for immediate deployment. Equipment transfer scheduled for rendezvous point Gamma 7 in 18 hours. Good hunting. Admiral Chen. Well, Marsk said to no one in particular, looks like we're going to find out just how reality-bending our new toys really are. The next 18 hours passed quickly as the fleet made its way to the rendezvous point. Gamma 7 was a small asteroid field on the edge of human space, chosen specifically for its isolation and the natural sensor interference provided by the floating rocks. The supply ship Prometheus was waiting for them, its cargo holds filled with equipment that officially didn't exist. Reality anchors were humanity's newest and most closely guarded secret devices that could manipulate the fundamental constants of physics within a localized area. Captain Marsk, the Prometheus's commander, Captain Lisa Park, greeted him over the comm. "I have to say, when I got orders to deliver this equipment, I thought someone was playing a practical joke." "No joke, Lisa. Just another day in the life of humanity's least conventional fleet." The transfer took 6 hours, with each ship in Marsk's fleet receiving a full complement of reality anchors and the specialized technicians needed to operate them. The devices themselves were surprisingly small crystalline structures about the size of a briefcase that hummed with barely contained energy. "Sir," Chief Engineer Kowalski reported, "the reality anchors are installed and calibrated. I have to admit, the theory behind these things is disturbing." "Disturbing how?" "Well, sir, they essentially create localized areas where the laws of physics become negotiable. Within the anchor field, we can adjust things like the speed of light, the strength of gravity, even the rate at which time passes." Marsk raised an eyebrow. "And the downside? If something goes wrong, we could accidentally create a pocket universe, collapse local spacetime, or turn everyone within the field into exotic matter." "Sounds like a typical Tuesday," Marsk replied. "How long until we reach Tau Ceti?" "At current speed, about 4 days, sir." "Good. That gives us time to run some tests and make sure these reality anchors work as advertised." The tests were conducted in empty space, far from any inhabited systems. The results were both impressive and terrifying. Within a reality anchor field, human ships could accelerate beyond the speed of light without entering hyperspace. Weapons could fire backwards through time, and enemy projectiles could be made to forget that they were supposed to explode. "Sir," Torres reported after the final test, "I'm reading some very interesting energy signatures from the Tau Ceti system. Long-range sensors are picking up massive fleet movements." "How massive?" 237 ships, sir. They're taking up position around the colony." Marsk smiled grimly. "Right on schedule. How long until we reach the system?" 6 hours at current speed. Reduce speed to 1/4 impulse. I want to arrive fashionably late to this party." The Coalition of Supremacy had indeed assembled an impressive force. Ships from 3 different species filled the space around Tau Ceti, their combined firepower enough to reduce the planet to molten slag. At the center of the formation was a massive dreadnought that could only belong to the hegemony of Kresh, a species known for their love of overwhelming firepower and dramatic gestures. "Sir," Chen reported, "we're being hailed by the Coalition fleet." "Put them through. Let's see what our new friends have to say." The main screen flickered to life, revealing 3 alien commanders standing side by side. The Vorthan representative was tall and insectoid, with compound eyes that glittered with malice. The Kresh commander was heavily armored and scarred, his species warrior culture evident in every line of his posture. The third figure was shrouded in shadow, representing the mysterious eternal dominion. "Human vessels," the Vorthan spoke first, his voice translated into flat, emotionless tones. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and we may allow your species to serve as laborers in our expanding empires." "Funny," Marsk replied. "I've heard that speech before. Didn't end well for the last guy who gave it." The Kresh commander stepped forward, his massive frame bristling with weapons. "The Oltarans were weak and unprepared. We have studied your tactics, learned from their mistakes. Your gravity weapons will not save you this time." "Gravity weapons?" Marsk looked puzzled. "Is that what you think we used against the Oltarans?" The shadowed figure of the Eternal Dominion representative spoke for the first time, its voice a whisper that somehow carried clearly across the communication channel. "We know of your deceptions, humans, your false weakness, your hidden capabilities, but we have prepared countermeasures. Countermeasures, Marsk repeated thoughtfully. Well, that's adorable. Tell me, have you prepared countermeasures for reality itself? Before any of the alien commanders could respond, Marsk cut the transmission and turned to his crew. All ships, activate reality anchors, full deployment. Space around the human fleet began to shimmer as 12 reality anchor fields came online simultaneously. Within those fields, the laws of physics became fluid, subject to human will and engineering ingenuity. Sir, Park reported from the weapons station, reality anchors are stable. We're reading successful field generation across all 12 ships. Excellent. Now, let's show our guests what happens when you bring conventional weapons to a reality-bending fight. The Coalition fleet opened fire first, 237 ships unleashing everything they had at the 12 human vessels. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles filled space in a deadly light show that should have vaporized the human fleet instantly. Instead, the attack simply stopped. Within the reality anchor fields, the human ships had adjusted the local speed of light to nearly zero, causing the incoming weapons fire to slow to a crawl. Energy beams that should have struck in milliseconds took minutes to cross the intervening space, giving the human ships plenty of time to maneuver out of the way. Sir, Torres called out, his voice filled with amazement. Their weapons are moving so slowly I could walk faster than their plasma bolts. Physics is a wonderful thing when you know how to cheat, Marsk replied. Return fire. Let's see how they handle weapons that don't obey their understanding of reality. The human ships opened fire, but their weapons behaved in ways that defied conventional understanding. Particle beams curved through space like guided missiles, seeking out targets with impossible precision. Missile salvos split into multiple warheads that existed in several dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to intercept or defend against. Most disturbing of all were the temporal weapons projectiles that struck their targets before they were fired, creating causality loops that left enemy ships destroyed by weapons that technically didn't exist yet. The Coalition fleet's formation began to collapse as ships found themselves under attack by weapons that shouldn't have been possible. The Vorthan vessels, with their advanced shields and armor, discovered that their defenses were useless against attacks that bypassed conventional physics entirely. Sir, the Kresh commander's voice crackled over the communication channel. What manner of sorcery is this? Sorcery? Marsk laughed. This isn't sorcery, my friend, this is science. Very, very advanced science. A Kresh battlecruiser simply ceased to exist, as it was caught in a temporal loop that caused it to be destroyed by its own weapons fire from 3 different timelines simultaneously. The crew had just enough time to look confused before they were erased from existence. Sir, Chen reported, the Coalition fleet is attempting to withdraw. Let them, Marsk ordered, but make sure a few of them don't make it home. Can't have them thinking this was just a fluke. The reality anchors reached out across space, creating localized fields of altered physics around fleeing Coalition ships. Some found themselves trapped in areas where time moved backwards, forcing them to relive their destruction over and over again. Others discovered that their engines had been convinced that forward was actually into the nearest star. The Eternal Dominion's flagship, a massive vessel shrouded in dark energy, tried to escape by entering hyperspace. Instead, it found itself translated into a parallel dimension where the laws of physics were even more negotiable than usual. The ship's final transmission was a series of screams as the crew discovered what happened to matter when it existed in too many dimensions at once. Within an hour, the Coalition of Supremacy had been reduced from 237 ships to fewer than 50. The survivors limped away from Tau Ceti, their formations shattered and their confidence broken. Damage report, Marsk called out. No damage to report, sir, Torres replied. The reality anchors held perfectly. We didn't take a single hit. Casualties? None, sir. Unless you count the headaches our physics department is going to have trying to explain what just happened. Marsk nodded, satisfied. Another day, another species that had learned not to underestimate humanity. The reality anchors had performed beyond expectations, turning what should have been a desperate last stand into a one-sided massacre. Sir, Chen spoke up, we're receiving a transmission from Tau Ceti colony. Put them through. The image that appeared was that of Colonial Administrator Janet Walsh, a middle-aged woman whose relief was evident in every line of her face. Captain Marsk, she began, I don't know how to thank you. When we saw that fleet approaching, we thought. You thought you were about to become a footnote in someone else's history, Marsk finished. Don't worry about it, Administrator. It's what we do. The colonists want to hold a celebration in your honor. A parade, speeches, the works. Marsk grimaced. That's very kind, but we'll have to take a rain check. Something tells me we're going to be busy for the foreseeable future. As if summoned by his words, the communication console chimed with an incoming priority message from Fleet Command. Speak of the devil, Marsk muttered. Administrator, we'll have to continue this conversation later. The transmission from Admiral Chen was brief and to the point. Congratulations on the successful field test. Intelligence reports that news of the Coalition's defeat is spreading rapidly throughout the galaxy. Expect increased interest from hostile species. New orders attached. Good hunting. Marsk opened the attached orders and whistled low. The list of species that had suddenly developed an interest in testing humanity's capabilities was longer than his arm, and some of the names on it were genuinely concerning. Sir, Torres called out, long-range sensors are detecting multiple fleet movements throughout the sector. It looks like everyone wants a piece of us now. Of course they do, Marsk replied. Nothing attracts predators like the smell of blood in the water. He stood and walked to the main viewport, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, dozens of alien species were preparing to test themselves against humanity's seemingly impossible technology. They would come with overwhelming numbers, advanced weapons, and absolute confidence in their superiority. And they would all learn the same lesson that the Oltarans and the Coalition had learned. Never underestimate a species that has made an art form out of making the impossible look routine. All ships, Marsk broadcast to his fleet, set course for the Proxima system. According to intelligence, something called the Infinite Armada is massing there with over 500 ships. 500 ships, sir? Torres asked. 500 ships, Marsk confirmed. Should be interesting. As the human fleet formed up and began their journey to the next battle, Marsk reflected on the strange turns his career had taken. He'd started out as a simple patrol captain, keeping the peace in the Outer Rim territories. Now he was humanity's unofficial ambassador to hostile alien species, delivering messages written in exotic physics and temporal paradoxes. It wasn't the career path he'd planned, but he had to admit it was never boring. The stars wheeled overhead as the 12 ships of humanity's most unconventional fleet headed toward their next appointment with destiny, leaving behind another debris field and another species that had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. And in the depths of space, the wreckage of the Coalition of Supremacy served as a monument to the dangers of underestimating humanity, a lesson that the galaxy seemed determined to learn one species at a time, no matter how many times it was taught. Captain Gideon Marsk wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.